You have been, I think, one of President Jokowi's what do you call it, deepest economic thinkers. I think you've helped to shape the current economic policy, and in that sense, the stable growth that we've had over the past 5 years. Maybe it's not been spectacular, but it's been stable. Looking ahead for the next 5 years, well, number one, what is the outlook for the overall economy, and where do you think businesses and investors should be focusing on?
Sure. I think let's start at the most basic level, right? Clearly, the relocation of supply chains out of China to around the world is something that is happening and would naturally happen even without the trade war, because the Chinese labor force started contracting around 2013 and continues contracting every year in China due to demographics and particularly the one-child policy, right? So I think we'll see continued relocation of those factories, and I expect a revival in demand for industrial estates in Indonesia, for example, right? So all those labor-intensive, low-technology factories that 25 years ago China took away from us, China is now giving back to us, right? Because China is done with that stage of development, and in a way has to move on, upgrade to more high-tech industries, to more high-value services, right? And they will evolve from being a manufacturer to being a factory investor. Many of those factories that are relocating from China to elsewhere will still be Chinese owned.
Right.
So they will still collect dividends on those factories, but not export revenues as such. And it's an example of their transformation from manufacturer to investor, right? Which is a much more high value job, being an investor, than a manufacturer. But to look at it at a higher level, right? I think we have the continuing rise of hundreds of millions of people in China, India, Southeast Asia, and around the world into what they call the global middle class, right? And so the first thing that people do when they're middle class is they want to travel. So we fully expect travel, tourism, lifestyle industries to continue to boom, right? Even if the currently feared global slowdown or recession happens, right? There's just too much income growth momentum in the emerging markets, and people just want to travel, right? Now, what are the implications for Indonesia, right? I think we're already starting to reap the benefits of President Jokowi's massive infrastructure building program from his first 5-year term. There's more and more stories now of places that are more conveniently accessible thanks to the president's airport upgrades, or farmers' products that used to take 10 days to get from farm to table, with new highways and new transport linkages, can now take only 2 days, right? So, but the president's already announced that in the second 5-year term, our focus will shift to human capital. And I would cite World Economic Forum competitiveness rankings, where overall Indonesia ranks 45 out of 140 countries, right? But we obviously score very high for our market size. We score, ranking number 8 out of 140 countries. We also score very high for business dynamism. We score ranking 30 out of 140. It's pretty high ranking, right? So, but we score very low. We always score low for skill, and we score very low for health, right? So, I think calculations will show that because of this gap in public health, in public skills, any $1 invested in those deficiencies will have a very high return on investment, right? Because the catch-up rate or the catch-up distance is so big, right? Even a small improvement in our skill or a small improvement in our public health would probably generate huge multiplier effects to our productivity, right? So I think before it was very obvious all over the place that we were suffering infrastructure deficits, right? But now it's becoming increasingly obvious that we're also suffering skills shortages and public health gaps. So addressing those, I believe, will have very high return on investment.